um, document their actions or what is required of their role, what is required of their various portfolios. One thing I want to the entire executive council to do is simply that, is document it, so um, we can actually get started right away, and we can get things going right away. As I found, this was one of the problems that I faced this year early on, was somewhat being unsure of what to do at times early on, but as soon as things got going, they were fine. But that's one thing I really think that could help, is by being able to document, say, the processes. For example, like for what a vice president of corporate relations could do, what a vice president of finance could do, outlining all their various responsibilities and tasks.
Thank you. And our next question, what does sustainability mean for your role? And we'll start with Kevin.
Because BAS role is already so big, representing the whole BE undergraduate, sustainability would be, for the VP HR position, would be to improve the training and development process and program that BAS offers to all their executives and also the undergraduate members. So how would that be done is by having an efficient and effective training for these execs. The events will also be run in a very smooth and very efficient way, which also gives the event much more value for you guys, for you undergraduates, as you will also learn a much better, get a much better experience through these events. So sustainability would mean to continuously improve the training program and also ensuring that the internal structure is more centralized. So my 3 goals.
Thank you. And Jessica?
Well, for the finance portfolio, sustainability definitely encompasses financial sustainability. We don't want to be overspending and utilizing resources that could be potentially used for future BAS exec teams. And I want to ensure that the events that we put on are actually financially feasible, and that we're not running on deficits. Because at the end of the day, that's really harming for BAS, because that money is for the students, and if we're not using it properly, the students are not receiving the most value out of BAS.
Thank you. And Daniel?
So sustainability for me personally, as potential president, would be ensuring sustainability for BAS as a whole. So that would ensure that everyone's voice is heard, everyone's concerns are met, and that we can do the most that we can to provide value to our students, because we do represent the entire BE student body, and with that, in order to be sustainable, we have to meet the needs of our student body. So that's what I think would be sustainability for the presidential role.
All right, thank you. And Chansey?
I see sustainability as having 2 definitions. The first definition revolves around maintaining our current processes. That is through team management, team development, the hiring process in general. We must sustain those to the point where we have very strong teams, very strong connection between those teams, and very strong communication as well. My second definition for it would be to sustain the new process that will be coming in the near future. As we've been constantly mentioning, BAS has now become an FSU, and with that, it gives us a lot of room to change, and we want to be able to develop processes that will stick for years to come.
Thank you. Our next question is, what challenges will BAS face next year? And Jessica, you'll be starting.
So I think the major challenges that BAS will be facing is just the adjustment from DSU to FSU, because there are more bureaucratic processes that we have to go through. But other than that, I feel like the current executive team has done a really good job this year, and we will have a strong transition, so the executives will have a good understanding of what their role is. It's just a matter of adapting to the new environment that BAS operates under.
Thank you. And Daniel?
So one thing that may come up is that we do have a fairly young team, but the thing is, I don't even see this as a challenge. I see it as more of an advantage. We are very, all the candidates here before you today are very motivated and very strong. But that, like I said, some people may view that as a challenge, but for me, I view that as almost a strength. We are all very motivated, and as I said in my speech, I believe we all have the right mindset and the right skill set to do the job effectively. But to address a problem is more so the communication thing to kind of ensure that communication flows both ways throughout the organization, both up and down throughout the ranks. That is one thing that I could see as being an issue, is trying to enforce that and to ensure that those standards are met.
Thank you, and Chansey.
Some of the challenges that I see coming in the near future is whether or not BAS will be able to change. That is, now that we've come, as I keep on mentioning, now that we've become an FSU, there is so much room for change, and there's always the threat of us sticking to our old ways, sticking to our old processes, and that may not be sufficient for the amount of growth that we want to, that our final goal would be. Also, I want to mention that another challenge is that as any HR personnel would probably think, is whether or not the team would be cohesive enough, whether or not we would be able to pull together and develop our plans throughout the year.
And Kevin.
Alright, so there are actually two challenges I foresee for next year. The first one is BAS becoming FSU. So we would need to ensure greater accountability in our BAS policies, which aren't even fully developed yet in the first place. So in order for me to solve that, I would be implementing my platform through creation of policies, which would include like figuring out some policies that would make BAS a better organization. The second one would be succession planning. Historically, BAS has not been very good at that. For example, this year we have 4 candidates for 3 positions. So one of the goals for next year, in order to counter this challenge I foresee next year as well, is by creating more opportunities for involvement and future interest in BAS executive positions by, as the candidates have mentioned here, being more transparent with everything that we do and getting the word out about these positions.
Thank you, and the next question will be answered by Daniel first, and it's, where do you see BAS in 1, 3, and 5 years?
So within the next year, I really hope that we develop our FSU policies, our policies surrounding the fact that we are now an FSU. And within the next 3 years, I really hope for BAS to be firmly cemented within, say, the BD School of Business and within the mindsets of all of our students. And within 5 years, I hope that we have grown exponentially by that point, where we can offer more events, more opportunities for our students to grow, because we do have that potential to grow with this new FSU status. I really do hope that we will be able to put on, say, more signature events, maybe not just necessarily BAS Banquet, but maybe one in a different semester as well, to celebrate the talent that we have at the BD School of Business.
Okay, following that.
Right, within 1 year, I see BAS as I see BAS maintaining their current values and their current processes, but throughout that time, they'll be developing the new values as an FSU, as well as developing new ideas and new processes for the better. Within 3 years, I see BAS as an equal to the reputation and what SAS, the Arts Student Society, has had within the past few years. And finally, within 5 years, I see BAS as perhaps one of the more stronger student unions. We'll have a very firm, very strong hiring process, a very strong collection of events that with high popularity as well.
Thank you, and Kevin?
If I were to be elected for VPHR, I would implement my goal. I will implement my goals into next year, which means centralization of everything and improving the training development program. So with that in mind, next year I expect to see BAS in a much more stable and structured position, and also have a better pipelining process for future exec teams as well. In 3 years, hopefully by that time, the executives as well would have further improved the implementation and have quite if I were to get elected next year for next year. And in 5 years, I would hope to see BAS in a very stable and very strong organizational position, so that all BD undergraduates can reap the benefits that we have been working so hard for.
And last, Jessica.
So within the first year, I hope to see that BAS has successfully adapted to the new environment that we have to operate under, and providing events and programs that are still of the same quality and caliber as the 2014-2015 academic year. Within 3 years, I hope to see that BAS is still strong and with the same motivation as our current team and next year's team. And I hope that the events and programs that we hold are still able to give a lot of value to our students, and that students are making strong connections, building themselves professionally, and making the most out of their experience. And in 5 years, I hope that BAS is developed enough that they're providing more programs and more things that will benefit the student society, as well as providing opportunities and areas where students can apply to and grow themselves.
Thank you, and that wraps up the general questions for the executive team candidates. We'll be moving on to the position-specific questions, which will be asked by Jason.
All right, so these next 2 questions will be aimed towards the president candidate, Daniel. So starting off, who do you consider to be your main stakeholders, and how do you plan to engage them?
So as I mentioned at the end of my speech, our main stakeholders would be faculty, the SFSS, our board of advisors, as well as the entire BD student body, since that is ultimately who we represent. In terms of engaging the BD student body, I think we do a good job of that now in terms of offering the events that we offer and our various initiatives. Engaging the board of advisors, that would be making use of, say, the 3rd and 4th year reps as well, since they will be sitting on the board of advisors, as well as taking their input into account to really get that overall point of view, as well as taking into account of, say, someone that's more experienced that would be a bit older sitting on the board of advisors. In terms of the SFSS, working closely with the biz rep, whoever that may be for the next year, to ensure that we are following procedure properly. And then faculty as well. I believe by accurately portraying, say, what it means to be a BD student through things like FROSH or BNP, and adding value through things like that, and like I said, portraying what it really means to be a BD student. I think that will accurately, say, represent faculty well.
Thank you. And how do you define success during your term as BAS president?
So I define success as being sustainable and also improving upon processes. So as I had mentioned, one of the things I really want to do is to really document, say, kind of the how-to process to improve the transition period, as well as get things going right away. I believe if we have a successful turnover, that would be something that I'd be very proud of, just to make sure that we get things going right away. And we have more time to actually give back to the students as well. In addition to that, as well as putting on successful events to really add value to our students. I believe that's what success would be.
Thank you. And so these next 2 questions will be aimed towards the VP Human Resources candidates. And so if Chancey, you could answer first. What is your approach to mediate disagreements within BAS organizing committees?
Do you mean within or between?
Yeah, within.
Oh, within. In order to mediate the conflicts that may arise within organizing committees, I see that everybody should have their own say into what they do. As I mentioned earlier, I want to develop teams that see each other as equals. By doing so, I want to be able to have everybody voice their own opinion, as well as, and in the end, it will result in perhaps a vote, and ultimately will lead to perhaps the president making a final making a final judgment onto what should be done.
Thank you, and Kevin?
From previous experiences, what I would do when there's a conflict is I would first listen to each individual party involved in this conflict. This would give me a better understanding of what the situation is if I do not know it myself. By understanding this situation, I would have time to further think about a solution for this and then come together as a group with the parties involved to discuss these issues and what can be done about it. Because most of the time, situations like in problems, conflicts like those occur because of miscommunication and misunderstanding. So by first understanding their point of view from their sides, I would be able to act as a mediator in order to ensure that everyone is happy with the solution.
Thank you, and now Kevin can answer this question first. What is your plan for allocating talent among the different BAS portfolios / activities?
So as I mentioned previously, one of the first things that I'll be doing if I were to get elected is to first get a hold of all the internal documents so I can understand the position much better. By having that understanding, I would then either change, improve, or keep the job description for each position the same. This way I have a foundation to find and recruit these people who apply. By having these set of skills that match the job description and job analysis from the information I've gathered from the internal documents and also from the exit interviews, I would have a better understanding of their job and be able to allocate their talents efficiently and hiring the right people for the positions as well.
Thank you, and Chansey?
As for me, in order to hire the right people, like Kevin actually mentioned, taking a look at the current job description, improving it, taking and adding perhaps a second factor in terms of whether or not they'll work well with the other candidates or within the team that we are about to put in. Aside from that, in order to select the candidates, I want to not only focus on the factor that they have the ability to hard work. I want it to work together. I also want to focus on the fact that and the question about whether or not they will be able to work with the people that are also appointed as well.
Thank you. And so this next question will be directed towards the VP Finance candidate. So how will you prioritize spending between BAS Frosh, BAS Mentorship Program, and BAS Banquet?
So BAS Frosh, BAS Mentorship Program, and the last one?
BAS Banquet.
BAS Banquet. Well, seeing that BAS Banquet is our signature event, it would be of more higher priority as well. BAS Banquet is held at a more expensive venue. It has more expenses involved, so definitely we have to allocate more money towards that. And then between BAS Frosh and BMP, I feel like I want to say both have to be equal because both of them provide the same value for its students. Some students can't, attend Frosh, so they go to BMP instead. And if one of them is not at the same quality as the other with regards to spending, it's not fair for the students, right? Because they don't receive the most value out of that. But I think with BAS Frosh, because the duration and the amount of activities and stuff that they do, I might allocate a little more towards that. But of course, at the end of the day, it is a team decision between me and the organizing committees and what their vision is. Because if I'm making decisions on my own, their vision is neglected, and then the spending isn't accurately portraying what they want to do and the goals of that organizing committee. So, yes.
Thank you. And so that concludes our questions towards the executive candidates. And I'll pass it back to Maddie for some further questions towards your representative candidates.
All right, so my first question for you, David. How will you ensure that BAS provides value to the members in your year of study?
Traditionally, the third and fourth year students have been less represented with a greater weight to first and second year programs such as Frosh, BMP. Currently, the BAS Banquet is the only event that third and fourth year students typically attend. So providing more value for that is by helping the Executive Council with determining things within the BAS Banquet and other events that can provide more value, such as networking opportunities. So information sessions, also being able to provide a more diversified sponsorship pool So helping the VPCR with potentially some contacts that I formerly had, and just ensuring that third and fourth year students are represented within just as much events and programs as first and second year students.
Thank you. And the next question, what do you identify as the priorities of the members in your year of study?
The definite priority is networking opportunities and career development. As a third and fourth year student, you're looking for full-time jobs, internships, to be able to take on when you graduate. So just providing more opportunities for all concentrations, not just accounting and finance, and ensuring that third and fourth year students are aware that Bass Banquet is there and provides a great opportunity to network. So leveraging my personal network and the individuals in my personal network to attract more third and fourth year students to the events.
Thank you. And how does being involved with Bass tie into your personal goals?
So coming into the last year of my studies and also having lots of past experience with Bass, one of my personal goals before I leave is to provide the Executive Council with an easy transition into the FSU. And this is one of the priorities of staying on, so ensuring that everyone understands how the FSU governance works from an SFSS level and a Bass level, and how the Constitution and policies tie in together to make sure that all execs and moving forward understand just how the organization will work under the FSU, and also being able to help them with determining ways that so currently the SFSS is going through governance changes, so helping the Bass president and the executive council with understanding changes that are coming down the pipeline from the SFSS, as I have a vast knowledge of it through my time working with Bass to become FSU.
Okay, thank you. And what challenges will Bass face next year?
I think there's always challenges that Bass faces year over year. Some of those challenges are definitely communication within the organization and within the student body. I think that's the largest issue that Bass faces, is representing the student body effectively and ensuring that all members of the BD School of Business understand that they are a part of Bass and that Bass isn't a club. So continuing to communicate that. In which capacity I can help with that is up to the executive councils. And yeah.
Okay, and where do you see Bass in 1, 3, and 5 years?
In 1 year, definitely Bass continuing to strengthen its policies and governance structure, as well as its transitioning. In 3 years, hopefully having a greater representation within the student body, seeing larger turnouts, increasing the turnouts for events and programs by a significant amount. 5 years, becoming more financially sustainable so that all students have equal opportunities to attend Bass events. So that means subsidizing ticket prices greater and finding more financially sustainable revenue streams. And in 10 years, hopefully to the point where Bass can become the greatest rallying point for the BD community, and bringing in all the clubs and student body activities to make sure that students have the opportunities to attend these events and feel a part of the community.
Thank you, and Jason will be continuing with the position-specific questions.
All right, so what is your approach to connecting with students within your year to best represent their interests?
Like I had mentioned earlier, leveraging my network within the third and fourth year students, I do have I have lots of experience in Bass, and as a result, know a fair amount of people within the BD community. Also developing or talking about Bass within my fourth year classes, so that the word is getting out to students that aren't currently involved, and just finding finding ways to measure the third and fourth year representation at events and programs.
Thank you. And what are 3 issues, concerns, or areas of interests of students in your respective year?
Like I mentioned earlier with one of the questions, one issue is definitely opportunities to network at a BD-wide level. Another one is the second one probably is the amount of events that are directed towards third and fourth year students with it from BAS. And the third one, just the opportunity to engage in the community in a social manner rather than just a professional manner, and providing more opportunities for third and fourth year students to have opportunities to socialize in a fun community.
And as a follow-up, where do you see room for improvement for BAS to address these?
Room for improvement needs to be slow to make sure that BAS continues to be financially sustainable. So not expanding operations and events too rapidly to overwhelm the financial constraints of BAS, but taking it year by year to, in the first year, maybe increasing the number of third and fourth year students at the BAS banquet, and providing more sponsors for third and fourth year students. Maybe 3 years down the road, providing 1 or 2 more events and continuing to move forward with both social and professional events for third and fourth year students or all students.
Thank you. So that concludes our debate portion. And so I'll pass it off to Katie, where she will give you more information pertaining to the actual voting process.
Before we continue, does anyone have any questions for the candidates?
So this portion is the open floor question. You can ask any questions to any of our candidates. I don't know if this is bothered.
I probably don't need to I guess for all of you, for the 4, I guess, position candidates, a lot of you mentioned improving sustainability and improving transparency. Can you each give me some specific examples of how BAS is not sustainable and how it's not transparent, and how you actually pick one specific?
Sure. So with sustainability, it's already very well known. Historically, we do not have from the HR side, we do not have a very strong succession planning. So it is not sustainable at all for the organization, because who is going to be our leader tomorrow? Who's going to be our leader in 5 years? So we do need to solve these complications, and that is not very sustainable in the first place. Now, a second, what was the other one? Sorry, sustainability and transparency. I believe transparency is really more of a personal thing that I've experienced from BAS events. So specifically, if we want to talk about a specific event, it would be the BD Olympics. It was very well run. It was a lot of fun. It engaged the BD community very effectively. However, compared to previous years, only one, maybe I'm like a sore loser, but there was only one team announced as a winner, and that's it. BAS did not really elaborate on what the process was, how it was calculated. It was not very transparent. So by increasing that communication aspect of it, by allowing other people to know, the attendees, the members, undergraduates, you guys, allowing you guys to know how this process came to be and what made this decision become like this, it would improve the transparency aspect of it.
Yeah, from an HR perspective, when it comes to sustainability, we see that there are many different processes. For example, hiring, team management, that's been the same throughout the years. And the big question would be then, how exactly are we going to be able to sustain these processes and develop? Wait, excuse me a second. Sorry. So when it comes to sustainability within the HR department, one thing to recognize is that the current processes, although they are working, there's definitely room for improvement. For example, as Kevin had mentioned, there are very few opportunities for us to look in towards the future about who will be applying, who will exactly be there for the next few years. As for transparency, it is once again it's definitely a matter of what you know is going on. When it comes to knowing about events and what is going on behind the scenes in those events, it is a very simple question. It can be solved through just simply asking us. We are sometimes even though there have been some hiccups in the past, I want to. It has been fairly difficult to be able to find out exactly what's going on. And in order to solve that, I find that being able to express what the problems are at the very moment to people that see our events as like perhaps not as good as what they expect it to be. By being transparent, we'll be able to basically solve all those questions.
So from a financial perspective, sustainability, I'm sure as all of you know, BAS doesn't actually have a regular source of revenue. What we rely on to get money is through internal sponsorship as well as through CR. And that is not financially sustainable because as everyone knows, sponsorship is extremely flexible. It can be canceled right away. We could be given a lot. So that is an area of improvement that we really need to work on for sustainability with regards to finance. And then as for the second question, which was transparency, I don't think a lot of people actually understand what the finance role does. Nobody really knows. They just know we deal with the numbers and we deal with money. So I want to let people know what we actually do. We create budgets, we create variance reports, we do many things to identify problems and areas of improvement that BAS can work on financially. And what we have been starting to do actually in the 2014-2015 Executive Council is that we were starting to produce fiscal reports so that the student body is aware of our financial activity as well as what we're doing with the money. And from there we can work slowly to improve the transparency financially. So that's it.
So from my viewpoint, when talking about sustainability, obviously talking about it in a organization on an organizational level, I would look to improve it, not necessarily saying it's bad as it is. I really just want to improve, say, the processes to get things underway quicker. For example, like the documentation processes to make sure everyone's on the same page initially, to really speed things along, to make sure that we have more time to give back to the students as well, and more sustainable with our growth as well, especially considering that we're now a faculty student union. As David had mentioned, we need to take kind of slow steps to when we are pursuing growth opportunities, because just to ensure the financial sustainability of it. And in terms of being sustainable in our operations, that's one thing we really need to do, is just kind of take it slow with the faculty student union status, and to make sure everything is running smoothly. As for transparency, what I was referring to was more so internal communication channels, and making sure that information was transparent throughout the organization, to make sure that everyone was on the same page and everyone was kind of working towards, like I keep referring to, kind of one common goal, to make sure that all of our events are sustainable, to make sure that all of our events are run successfully and do adequately represent the needs of the entire student body.
This one's for the HR candidates. You both mentioned like you were going to put in new policies. I think Chancey, you said innovations, and Kevin, you said new policies. Can you give me like one specific example of a policy that's not there right now that you would implement within your first few months of your position? And start with Chancey.
One of the biggest policies that one of the big processes that I've seen within the HR, within HR, from what I've experienced as a CR coordinator, is that there have been regular checkups that Katie has been doing in the past, and they usually reflect on what your satisfaction is within like our team. But I find that when that is finished, I don't see a change that has been done. So, for example, they'll ask me what my experiences are currently like in BAS, and I would respond. It's just hypothetical, but I would just respond that it hasn't been too great in the past month or so. But unfortunately, like it's everything has always been constant, and I want to be able to change the way that these answers are dealt with.
Alright, so for myself, I actually went through the whole constitution and realized that there was only section of it where it describes what DSU was. However, BAS is no longer at DSU, and it has to include, there has to be an amendment or add an additional, I guess, policy where it states what exactly FSU is and how does it affect BAS and also their members. One thing pertaining towards the VPHR is, again, according to the current constitution, the VPHR's role is to recruit and also do the HR planning for unelected BAS positions, as I mentioned previously. Also proceed as acting president in the event that the president is unable to further continue and fulfill their duties, and also act as a signing officer. What a policy that would implement in the Constitution would be more towards the HR role regularly maintaining and updating the Constitution in the sense that the vision and the mission of the organization is kept consistent with the goals that the EC team has for the next year, next 3 years, next 5 years, and ensuring that it is a sustainable and renewing process for the whole team.
So your policy would be to actually make amendments to the Constitution?
What do you mean?
Sorry, that's just what I got from your answer, is that you would make amendments to the Constitution in your role as HR.
Yeah, I would increase, because currently it is only pertaining towards internal team. However, VPHR has been given such a, it deals with such a large scope that, and deals with so much more than just recruiting and hiring and HR planning, that I believe the VPHR role should also include a new amendment in their roles listed in the Constitution in regards to the movement from DSU to FSU for BAS.
You talked a lot about succession planning and how there's a lack of it. Can you maybe give an example of a policy that might address that side of it?
I wouldn't say, for me, if I were to fix or try to face the issue of succession planning, I wouldn't exactly change the Constitution for that. I would implement a better, like perhaps suggest some events that for the VP internal or VP events, suggest events that can engage more the BAS, like BD undergraduates, so that they're more in contact with the VP roles. Because it seems like there's not a lot of exposure in terms of what BAS execs really do. It's more of a, we plan an event and then the BD undergraduates would know of the event, but not exactly what the event, like how it came to be, what our roles are, and all that kind of stuff. Although there are job descriptions and and like application forms for these kind of things, it doesn't really give them an insight of what they should be expecting. So therefore, that's why I think the succession planning is not being as efficient as it should be.
Does anyone else have questions?
All the candidates mentioned inclusive leadership, but really didn't elaborate on what it really is to them. Can anybody provide a more tangible answer to that, or a better explanation as to what inclusive leadership means to them?
Are you asking a specific person, or is everyone supposed to answer that question? Everyone? Okay.
Everyone.
So for me, inclusive leadership, what I meant by that is ensuring that everyone in my team, not just my portfolio, but everyone in the BAS the BAS executive team, is able to provide their own feedback and also opinion. So by including them in our planning processes or including them in our execution processes, we would be able to ensure that everyone's on the same page, and not just the people who are in charge of the people in charge of the event or whatever execution plan or whatever planning that's going on. And this will allow for a better inclusiveness in the whole team. Does that answer your question?
For me, the term inclusiveness is actually fairly close to what Kevin actually had said. When it comes to including everybody, I want to be the person that sees, that enforces the idea that everybody within the team are equals when it comes to providing their idea to the situation. For example, if we will there will always be like conflicts with between ideas within people within the team, not only within the portfolio but within the BAS team as well. Maybe not even the BAS team. Maybe there'll be a conflict between what the undergraduate students thinks and what the BAS team feels what the BAS team feels right for the situation. In that case, I want to be able to voice the concerns of everybody together so that we'll be able to provide ultimately a better answer for the problem at hand. Yeah, does that answer your question?
For me, inclusive leadership is something that I want to work towards. Inclusive leadership is, I think the root of it is communication between team members. And in the past, I have struggled with communicating and making sure that everyone is on the same page. And I know that's something that is what needs to be done in order to have inclusive leadership. Because if you're not on the same page with everyone else, then, for example, in the finance portfolio, your budgets are not reflective of what is the current situation is. And that is what I want to work towards, being more initiative and actually including everyone's ideas by speaking out to them and finding time to be like, hey, well, do you agree with this? Is there something wrong that you see? Can you take a look at what my work is like right now, and like provide feedback and information as to whether I can improve on it or if it's, you know, in good standing. And that's what I think inclusive leadership is, and I want to strive for that in the 2015-2016 Executive Council.
So like the previous three I mentioned, it's more so including everyone's opinion to make sure everyone's opinion is heard. Whether that's, like Jessica had mentioned, for budgets, including everyone across the board, because realistically at the end of the day that does affect everyone. It is something that everyone needs to be a part of, really including everyone in that decision-making process, especially planning events, right? Like we need to sit down as a team and make a decision as a team. I don't want, say, like an individual calling a shot and just off of a whim. I want everyone to kind of be on a level playing field in order to effectively make decisions on behalf of BAS.
Just to follow up on that, do you think that this type of leadership style would impede, say, the operations of an organization? So everybody has a lot of different opinions. Would this impede your decision making and how long that takes?
It could potentially slow things down a little bit, but I don't think it would be to the point where it would actually hinder our operations. For me personally, it is better to have, say, everyone's opinion heard at least, and to ensure that at least like they know that their voice is being heard. But I don't think it would be to the point where it actually, say, stop operations or impede them in any sense.
Does anyone else have questions? Okay, I have questions. I have 3 questions. The first one is for Daniel. So you talk a lot about centralizing communication due to your experience this year. So how does that actually look like in terms of implementation? How do you think centralized communication looks like?
So for me, it's just a matter of keeping everyone on the same page, making sure that communication channels are open, especially amongst, say, teams and whatnot. So for centralized communication, one thing that we could look at is, say, having a BAS orientation where I set out, say, expectations I have personally as as potential president, and they also have expectations for me leading them. So one thing is that I want to really keep communication 2 ways, and it doesn't feel like, say, I'm just kind of telling them to do certain things or I'm making decisions based off of my own personal judgment. I'm really including everyone. It goes back to the kind of inclusive leadership as well, including everyone and kind of having decision-making power amongst the executive council instead of just like one person calling the shots, as well as effectively communicating messages throughout the various portfolios. I believe that's one thing that we could do that could have been done a little bit better in terms of actually including everyone within decision-making processes, or just making everyone feel kind of like how we say being a part of the BAS family, including everyone in that, I think would be a good way to start. So essentially setting that precedent from day one, and laying out that that's kind of like my expectation for the team, and enforcing it. I think that would be the best way, kind of centralized communication.
My second question is for the HR candidates. So you guys talk a lot about things that are seemingly outside of the HR portfolio. So for example, Chansey, you talk about innovation in our events, and then Kevin, you talk a lot about the Constitution and such. So I want to know, in percentages, how much percent would you focus on your HR related work, and how much percent would you focus on, for example, helping out in events and helping out in the executive council portfolio areas in terms of percentage?
So I see the VP of HR as a person who supports all portfolios. They have a say, and they are aware of what's going on within all portfolios within the entire organization itself. In terms of percentages, I would say I would allocate perhaps 60% of my time to developing things in the development processes in VP of HR, as well as focusing equal amounts of the remaining 40% with other processes, and seeing how their teams are doing, and how everything is going in general.
Okay, sorry, before Kevin, you speak, a follow-up to that is when you say seeing how they're doing, does that mean attending, for example, event meetings, marketing team meetings and stuff like that?
Yes, I want to be able to, I want to be aware of what exactly is going on. If there's a conflict within a team, I want to be there to be able to support it. Of course, if they don't, if they would rather keep it private, I'd definitely open with that. But yeah, I want to be able to just keep the team together. That's just a general.
Kevin?
Sorry, when you said that distribute the percentage between all my HR activities and the event planning, was that your question?
Event planning and just supporting in general, because you also talk about the Constitution, which strategically talking is under the presidential portfolio. So I just kind of want to know how much percent you would put in each category.
So in terms of my HR portfolio, I would say 60% of it, again, would be spent on the training and development, and also the HR processes, because by ensuring that we have a stable and a very efficient training program and development program, it is already indirectly helping each portfolio with their events, because it would allow them to have an understanding of what their role is supposed to be. And one of my goals is to centralize the internal structure, which also means that in doing so, if people are planning an event and they have any questions, they know who exactly to look for, instead of asking different people and getting different answers. So it makes it more consistent. So that 60% goes towards already the event planning and also the managing of my portfolio. In terms of the remaining 40%, I would say it goes towards supporting the president itself, because I need to make sure that if I were to get elected, the VP HR position needs to ensure that they know exactly what is going on with the president's side, as well as all the other portfolios, because again, one of our roles, according to the Constitution, is to act as the preceding president in the event that the president is no longer able to support the role or continue the role, by ensuring a full understanding of what they do, and also by being actively involved with the president. I can also achieve my goal of implementing better policies, or just amending the Constitution along with the president. So I'm not saying that the VP HR is solely in charge as well of the Constitution, but should be supported, like a big part of the support with the president's role of that.
My second question is a follow-up to the position-specific question of if there's a conflict in a team. So you guys talk about how you'll try to make people happy and hope in them that your actions will result in no more conflict. But what if the conflict has been occurring for a long time and you just figured it out, and by this point in time there's no way to make anyone happy? What would you do about the situation? Would you try to solve the conflict, or would you try to, for example, if this is an OC position, just try to have the event happen? And Kevin, you can answer the question first.
when you say OC position, are you talking about like one of BAS operations?
Yeah, so for example, it's like Bass Frosh, and for example, if like the problem has been going on for a long time, and you just knew of the conflict, and there's no way that you know would make people happy, would you try to solve the conflict or just go forward with the event?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to understand the question better. So when you say a long time, are you saying past years or for like maybe like for the whole event, like planning process, but 1 month before the event? Is that what you're?
Long time as in since they started their position. So not in like the culture of Bass Frosh, for example, but like since they started their chair position or started their OC position.
Well, obviously, when there are issues that have been going on for a long time, such as the one you were talking about, it is nearly impossible to make everyone happy. Because it has just become such a toxic environment for the team that it is hard to make everyone happy, as you mentioned. However, the event still has to happen, and what I would do to resolve that conflict is really to just make sure that they understand where they are each coming from. Because the problem with, say for example, Bass Frosh, it may be because they have not been effectively communicating with a BAS executive team, BAS executive council member. So by having everyone, the parties involved, understand what the situation is and why they have opposing ideas, and ensuring that they can come into a compromise, so that they can compromise, would be most beneficial for the event. Because we have to keep in mind that the purpose of BAS and the purpose of the OC team is not really to gain experience for our own. It is really to pass these experiences and add value to our BD undergraduates and ensure that they have a great learning experience in the faculty itself.
The job of the, I believe that the job of the OC is to focus on the matter at hand. So if there was a conflict that was unsolvable, I would at the very least get everybody to be on the same level, to compromise and to think of a part where at least everybody is not unhappy, not happy, but at least neutral about the conflict. Of course, every single solution, every single problem has its roots, and those roots can definitely be found. And since it is so, and if the scenario that you mentioned does come true, that it is very close to the date of the event itself, the ultimate goal of the OC is to make sure that the event happens regardless of internal conflict. So, in order to, I guess to put a long answer into short, I would focus on the event at first, and after that, resolve the problem right after.
Does anyone else have questions?
I'm up for David. At what steps are needed to be taken over the next 3 years for BAS to step out of being like a club and actually become a student union or student society? You feel free to disagree with that.
The question, although not really directed within my role, just as from an advisory standpoint, I believe that the first step is transitioning into the FSU status, because with SFSS changing governance and making FSUs more crucial, playing a crucial role in the SFSS general body, it's important for BAS to really move forward with FSUs and continue to develop as an FSU and lead the precedent, or setting the precedent for FSU reform and governance within the SFSS. Secondly, I believe that it starts to begin with trying to expand operations and really making sure that BAS as an organization doesn't begin to create a cliquey feel. Another step would be developing a more financially sustainable model so that there is more opportunities for students to attend BAS events. And with that being said, providing opportunities with that being said, making events something that all students might want to lead to. I believe that it's also really about working with the clubs so that BAS isn't cannibalizing the club's events, and operations and taking away ticket sales or sponsorship from clubs, and just really moving forward, trying to set and remind all students that BAS is a student society and not a club, and really working on making sure that BAS is a student society in its operations.
Any last questions? Okay, so thank you so much for coming out today. I'll just talk to you guys about how you can actually vote. So voting actually doesn't start until February 4th. Polls open at 12 o'clock, and you'll receive a link through your SFU email. Only business majors, minors, or joint majors can vote. So if you have friends that are outside of the business area, then they won't be able to vote, unfortunately. So voting is open until February 6th at 11:59 p.m. If you guys don't have access to the link for some reason, feel free to message any of the candidates or the BAS Executive Council, and we can provide it to you. There's also going to be physical booths in WMC by Tim Hortons on the 5th and the 6th if you don't have access to internet to vote for some reason. Yeah, that's basically it. Your votes will be anonymous, and the results will be announced on February 9th, around 72 hours after voting closes. And if you have any questions for the candidates, they'll be around to answer them personally, or you can message them also from the information that can be found on our BAS website. Yeah, so thank you so much for coming out today, and I hope you have a great evening. Yeah, thank you.